Hello all, this is the Monday, March 6, 2023 meeting of the Architectural Review Committee. It is 5:30 p.m. Please silence cell phones and pagers. Planning Director, please call roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. Member Dozy is excused. Member McCoy.
Here.
Member Paline.
Here.
Member Walsh.
Here.
Alternate Member Thompson.
Here.
Vice Chair Rotman.
Here.
And Chair Jakeway.
Here.
We have 6 members present and we have a quorum.
Thank you. And I think we would say that Mr. Thompson is not a standing member. I mean, he's not a stand-in, he's a standing.
Thank you.
Outstanding.
Yes. May we have a staff report on the posting of the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair and committee members, our agenda was posted on Thursday, March 2nd, in accordance with state law and city policy.
Thank you. Does the committee have any revisions or changes to the agenda? Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve agenda.
John McCoy, thank you. Second.
I'll second.
Second, Dan, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Since this is a public meeting, audience members are permitted to comment on any issue that's within this committee's purview. Comments on an item appearing on today's agenda are made at the time that that item is presented. If you would like to speak on an item not on today's agenda, you may speak now. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. I see nobody here in the audience. Do we know if they have anybody in the waiting room?
Nobody has signed up in advance and no one has their hands raised.
Okay, thank you. So let's proceed to the minutes from previous meetings. We have 2 sets. Does anybody on the committee have any changes or revisions to the minutes from the January 17th, 2023 meeting? Nope. Okay, the second one is, anybody on the committee have any changes or revisions to the minutes of the February 6th, 2023 meeting? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve those 2? Well, I guess they're part of the consent calendar, but do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Second.
Second by John McCoy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We will move now to the unfinished business. First one, number 2A, is a request by Jerry G. Johnson on behalf of VIP Motor Cars Limited for a minor architectural application for a partial demolition, a 1,973 square foot addition and exterior alterations to an existing automotive dealership, Genesis Palm Springs, located at 4057 East Palm Canyon Drive. Could we have a staff report, please?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Let me just share my screen here for the presentation. All right. The project in front of you tonight is a proposed operations and a demolition and addition at Genesis Palm Springs Dealership, which is located between Mercedes and Hyundai dealerships near the intersection of East Palm Canyon and South Cherokee. The project proposes a partial demolition, addition, and exterior alterations to the building, in addition to the installation of a new parking areas and landscaping. As you may recall, the ARC reviewed this project back in January, and at the time, the committee voted unanimously to continue the project due to some design issues. And these design issues include a lack of adequate landscaping and then also differentiation of the building orientation to address solar weekend. And since the applicant has revised the building proposal, and this is the second ARC meeting. And since this is the second meeting, the staff requests that the ARC render a decision pertaining to this project tonight. So the landscape issues, this is just to show what was previously proposed and what's being revised. So, the previous proposal, the applicant was proposing the installation of a red yucca only in the selected areas. And the plant palette did not include any palms or trees, and there was no landscaping proposed for the media. The revised proposal, which is on the right side, shows the diversified plant palette, and applicant is not proposing the installation of a date palms and also the relocation of the existing Mexican farm from the east side of the building to the parking lot, which will be created on the west side. In addition to the planting bed landscaping, the applicant is proposing to install additional landscaping in the median area. The proposed plant palette includes agave, golden barrel cactus, lantana, green carpet, date palm, in addition to the previously proposed red yucca. And the applicant proposing the installation of the Mexican beach block, which is the rocks that are ranging from 3 inches to 5 inches in size. And the proposed plant material will be 15 gallons in size. And the size of the proposed date palms will be 18 feet. And the applicant submitted this rendering to show how this new project will appear in addition to the proposed changes to the landscape area. The other thing that the ARC provided at the January 17th meeting is the solar heat gain issue. And according to the justification letter submitted by the applicant, the business is proposing to utilize low emittance glazing system to provide the solar, to address the solar heat gain issue. There are 2 types of materials that applicant is proposing for the ARC consideration tonight. One is the solar band 72, which is a corporate standard, and solar band number 70. And applicant provided a specification of these materials in attachment number 5. But just to kind of show and compare what these 2 products are, the solar band 70, which is the alternative material that the applicant is considering or proposing for this project, is darker in color compared to solar band 72, which is a standard. And solar band 70 performs and provides less light transmittance compared to solar band 72, one has less the heat transmittance. And solar band 72 is a lot lighter in color, and it's more efficient in terms of light to solar gain. The applicant can provide additional information regarding the specifications of this grading system that's being proposed for this project. In addition to the use of grading system, that applicant proposing to install a case inside the building. Applicant submitted these photos to just demonstrate the sample of shading material. These shades are installed at the Hyundai dealership, which is right next door. And applicant proposing to implement the same thing at the Genesis dealership. The applicant proposing to install the new grading system on all elevations. And then also the solar shade installation location, it will be installed on the west elevation for sure. The details of other installation locations can be confirmed by the applicant tonight, who's going to be a part of this meeting. And at the last meeting, there was a question with regards to rooftop mechanical screening, and the applicant proposing and provided these details and the paint specification of the screen. So based on the revision, the staff finds that applicant has generally addressed ARC's comment regarding landscaping issue and solar heat gain issue. Applicant proposing the installation of additional planting materials in the median and the planting beds. And then also they are proposing to utilize the living system, which is specifically engineered to address solar heat gain issues. And for these reasons, staff recommends that the ARC approve the project subject to the conditions. The one thing that the staff like to presented to the ARC tonight is that staff finds that the composition of the median landscape needs some improvement. So that the staff is recommending that applicant consider installing additional boulders or additional plant material to achieve the composition in the area. And then also, the landscape plan shows that the project actually proposes the application of a Mexican beach rocks in all planting area of the background. However, that used to be limited as an accent for overall cohesiveness. And this concludes the staff presentation. And the owner of the business is available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Noriko. One quick question. Are we reviewing signage as part of this review?
No, the applicant has not submitted sign permit application as a part of this application, and that is actually condition, meaning that if they were to meet for any signage, that subject to the planning department review.
Thank you. Does anybody in the committee have questions of staff? No? Well, if the applicant is present, please come forward, give us your name and any presentation that you'd like to give us.
I'm attending virtually. Good
Okay.
evening. Good evening, Honorable Chair Jake Way and ARC members and city staff. I'm Jerry Johnson, representing VIP Motor Cars and Genesis of Palm Springs. And I want to thank you, first of all, for your work on behalf of the city of Palm Springs. And I want to thank you for the constructive criticism that you gave us in regard to our redevelopment project. I think we now have presented a much better project for your consideration. Our desire is to redevelop an aged building to an exciting franchise that we are honored to represent and have here in the city of Palm Springs. I believe the staff has given a great report and talked about most of the things that we've done. We actually employed a landscape architect, and which we had not done before. And I think that has come with a better design. We greatly enhanced one of the landscape areas in terms of size on the western side of the building. And then we added a small planter. We have certain space constraints. So we took your criticism to heart, and I think we've got much better result in regard to the landscaping, including the addition of 5 significant sized palm trees. In regard to the solar gain, one thing I'd like to point out, and I don't know if we can go back to the photos or not, that we had on the Hyundai facility, which is next door. I wanted to point out that we have a 5-foot overhang on the Genesis building that's being proposed, much like what we have on the Hyundai building. And if we can backtrack to that picture that shows the Hyundai facility.
All right.
Give us just 1 second.
We have it.
Slide 11 there, yeah, or 10 now.
Sorry. For some reason I'm dragging
Here we go. The photo in the bottom left shows the 5-foot overhang on the Hyundai, which also has glass walls, obviously. And you can see, of course, that's that time of day, but significant shade provided by, and that time of year, by the 5-foot overhang. So that's one thing staff did not mention in the report that I wanted to make sure that we pointed out. And I'm available to answer any questions. I may not have all of the technical answers, but we certainly can find out additional answers. And I will end my time and just thank you for your consideration, but I am available to stay online if you need to refer back to me.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. At this point, we're open to any public comments about this particular project. Is there anybody from the audience or on Zoom who would like to make any comments? I don't see anything, so now we can have the committee, any questions of the applicants? Does the committee have any questions of the applicant? John,
Strategically, yeah, Mr. Johnson, a couple questions in terms of the solar control that you tried to integrate there. There was some question as to on which windows or what orientations would have the benefit of interior shades. Are you doing it on just the west or what?
No, sir, on the east and the west. And what we found on the Hyundai facility is it's, during the winter months, we don't often have to draw the shades at all, but during the summer, in the early morning hours, we'll need the shades drawn on the eastern side. We'll raise those shades during the course of the day and then lower them in the evening hours on the western side.
Sure, that, and I understand that. I think, yeah, it's a non-issue in terms of winter orientation, but in terms of both spring and summer, it's going to be a killer. The overhang that you mentioned, just as a point, I mean, with the low angle western light, I'm just not sure what benefit that would do, but certainly the interior shades and anything like that, your improvement in the solar gradation of the glass should help.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was it.
that's it. Any other questions of the applicant?
Are
John
you,
McCoy.
is there any change to the lighting in the display areas, exterior display areas?
None has been proposed.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, committee discussion. Well, I think the applicant really listened to us. I'm glad they gave a detail of the mechanical screen. There's not a dimension on it, so I would like to ask that screen be required to be at least as tall as the equipment is. The difference between the solar different glasses, I think is so minor. I think to keep with the one that Hyundai or Genesis first wanted gives more visibility to the showroom. So I think that in my mind, that's fine. And the landscape additions have, I think, solved our questions. Have I missed anything or anybody else have any other comments?
Evelyn,
Yes, Dan.
I still driving by, they're still parking 2 cars per pad, not 1. And I don't think that looks great. So I'd like them to only park 1 car per pad.
Okay. Any other comments? Do we have a motion? Dan?
I shouldn't have looked up. Why not? I'll make the motion to approve as submitted with the exception of some kind of a note about just 1 car per pad out front.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from John McCoy, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for your attention to our comments.
Thank you all.
Okay, we are moving ahead to item number 2B, which is a request by Chris Prado, owner of Sandfish Sushi, for a minor architectural application to approve an existing outdoor dining area for a restaurant, Sandfish Sushi, located at 1556 North Palm Canyon Drive. Could we have a staff report, please?
Good evening. And committee.
Sorry.
There you go. All right, so I'm bringing Sandfish Sushi back. They were first seen by ARC back in June 2001. I'm sorry, it was 2001, 2002. Last year, 22. They're proposing outdoor dining for the Sandfish Sushi restaurant. You can see it highlighted above. The outdoor dining they're proposing is actually going to be located in the adjacent parking lot. They are proposing to occupy half of that first floor, yeah, a quarter of that parking lot for outdoor dining area. So this is pre-COVID, the restaurant pre-COVID. During COVID, they were allowed to extend outdoor dining, which is how they expanded into what they've expanded to now. This is their new site plan. So their new site plan addresses some of the comments that were given at the prior meeting. They rearranged their parking lot area. They included a few more parking spaces. They widened the approach at the existing driveway to the north by making the existing planter just a little smaller without removing the palm trees that are there. And they added some landscape and palms in the back to provide some sort of shading for the parking spaces in the rear. So this is their proposal now. As you can see, they've also made some more changes there, including what they call an automated pergola that's attached to the Sandfish Sushi building roof and the proposed or existing storage pots. They're also including wind screens on along the dining area to protect from the wind in that area. And they're painting at the existing wall of a black to match the theme of the restaurant. One of the conditions from engineering, as you can see, I'll put it out here, is there's an existing approach that they are covering. One of the conditions by engineering is that they need to completely I guess I lost the word. They need to block the approach. They need to make the curb and gutter and put the sidewalk. So that pergola is not taller than the existing building. It stands about 10 feet 8 inches tall, and they are proposing mixers and fans under it as well. So the following photos just show renderings of what the inside of that outdoor dining area looks like. It does match the theme of the red building across the street. And there's a list of their proposed materials. Again, it does not the same with the rest of them. So just to reiterate, in case it was lost, the applicant did submit last year a shared parking plan with an adjacent neighbor. And that shared parking plan allows them to utilize parking spaces for this restaurant. So the quantity of parking isn't an issue. I think what was mainly the issue was the way it circulated the first time. So this is their revision to that. This landscape area in the rear, they've added a little storage area to put I guess the propane tanks when they're not in use. And they've also included a bike rack as well. That concludes my report. Staff does recommend approval subject to conditions. And the applicant is available to answer any questions via Zoom as well as the online.
Thank you, Alex. Does the committee have any questions of the staff? Yes, John.
If I could start, Alex, could you go back to your original graphic, the screenshot of, it was an aerial. I'm having trouble following the before and after.
This one?
No, it was an aerial
Oh, the
photo,
parking area.
right? Yes, my question pertains to the parking,
This one?
very first one.
It was an actual photograph.
Oh. Oh, what area?
There it is.
There, okay. All right, so the agreement for extra parking is to the north, correct?
Correct, and it's actually across the street, perpendicular to this corner.
There are two areas.
No, there's only one area and it's perpendicular to this corner, so there's a restaurant right there,
Yes.
perpendicular to that. Is where the shed
It's
parking
on
is.
the north side of Vistachino. There's sort of a professional building there. I think it has a medical use in it.
Okay.
On the north side of Vistachino.
Okay.
That's where they. have their-
So I assume that there will be signage or something so that as people arrive there and can't find a parking spot, they would continue to the auxiliary parking.
Yeah, we could also condition that they add that signage.
Yeah, because I think it's not obvious.
Yeah.
Unless I'm not getting it. It's not attached to this existing facility.
My understanding was, and we do that, often with the parking plan. I think the applicant can speak to their intention for it, but as I understood it, there was to be no parking for the restaurant except for ADA parking on site, and all guest parking was to be off site and not a decent space. Correct now?
Yeah, and again, the applicant can speak to that, but was my understanding that they were also going to notify their patron in some way, which could include signage.
Yeah,
And so I think if the applicant can speak to the plan, then it would be a good question for them, and then we can certainly condition that as appropriate.
that would be great. In a nutshell, my concern is that it's a little bit like speeds of a freeway going down there and you have seconds to figure it out. And so it just seems a bit dicey that all the effort that, yes, there is this auxiliary parking lot, but you've really got to know where it is and how to get there quickly.
Mhm.
That was it for my questions for Alex. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the staff?
Chair Jakeway?
Yes.
Yes, Robert Rotman. Just to clarify, this proposed change is a permanent change, is that right? Because this was evolved out of COVID measures that the city put in place. So this is for a permanent change.
Correct.
Okay. And then and in terms of the review process or approval process, is this going through plan check with the building department as well?
We could certainly coordinate with the building department. I'm trying to think of where it would be in process in terms of plan check.
Probably need to, well, they would probably need to review that automated further because they are having that and they're having the ministers. So it would go through contact.
Okay. And then I noticed in one of the renderings on the wall along North Palm Canyon, it looks like they have a new logo or sign. And I'm just wondering, you can see it in that image over on the left with the fish and something below. Is that going to be part of a signage program or is that exempt, or how is that going to be approached?
So I spoke to the applicant prior to this meeting, in addition to sign an application, it wouldn't be permitted, it wouldn't be part of, it wouldn't fit in the ordinance, so it would not, that signage will not be there.
Okay. And then the last question is related to the shade structure. That is part of this application, but there was no detail about what that is other than a photo. So is that part of this or not?
That shade structure is part of it, it will, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, at this point, the applicant could give us your name and make a presentation on the project, please.
Hello, I'm remote as well. This is Chris Pardo. I'm the owner and architect of Arrive Hotel. I was the architect of 1501 Gastropub, the co-owner of Sandfish, and the architect of Fleur Noir behind Sandfish. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. I'm actually in the Virgin Islands right now, so it's 10 o'clock at night. So if I'm a little bit slow, I apologize. To give a little background on the site itself, the joint parking lot is actually one half ours, Sandfish, and one half to the retail space to the north. So within our lease, we had those 4 parking spaces for the first 3 years of operation until COVID hit, basically. During COVID, as described, we went through the process of getting the temporary outdoor dining approved. Instead of doing a parklet on the street, we did it on our own leased property. The concept was to create a safe environment for our patrons, and something that would be aesthetically pleasing for the neighborhood that I've been working on for the last 15 years. Over time, we ended up reaching the agreement to get the 28 parking spaces, partially just out of business need. We need additional parking from the property, I guess, northwest of us. And we do have signage and can increase the size of that signage as well. We do text our guests as well if they book through Open Table and give directions and explanations on additional parking areas. The proposal is reviewed by the city building department and streets. Rick from Streets Department was the one that gave the feedback on the parking spaces, and we provided the now 24-foot wide drive aisle to have in and out vehicular traffic, which we haven't had for the past 2 years. We've added now a ADA parking space, and then 4 additional usable parking spaces, bike racks, more landscaping area, and then a storage area to safely store the propane that we use during the winters. The design of I guess we've gone through this on some of the previous submittals, but the design of the units are 2 shipping containers that we're cladding with epay, vertical epay. And then on the interior of the shipping containers, we've done a wallpaper that's similar to inside the actual restaurant that depicts the waves of the ocean. And it's made with a vinyl wrap, kind of like you would have on a car wrap. I use it a lot on our hotel elevators, and it's really durable material. The decking itself is a Trex decking, and then the pergola, it's a kit apart system. So it's a 6x6 post, and it has operable louvers. So you can open it up to have sun or have complete shade, and it has integral gutters built into the actual uprights. We are, as Alex stated, also suggesting to add a windscreen, transparent windscreen, similar to what Willie put in at 1501 Gastropub. As you all know, up in Uptown, it's very windy 6 months out of the year, and challenging sometimes to eat outdoors with high winds. Trying to think what else. The overall aesthetic of it is to tie in with the aesthetics of Sandfish itself. The building features the epay surrounding around the soffit and the front railings, excuse me, and on the interior, as well as I said, the wallpaper on the interior of the actual building. That's all I can think of right now, but obviously here to answer all your questions.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Questions from the committee for the applicant? Are there any members of the public who would like to make a comment on this project? Okay, then we said no questions from the applicant.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sure, Robert, sorry.
Yeah. So talk to me about ADA access to the patio.
Sure. So currently we have 2 patios. We have the lower patio, then the upper stepped up patio, because of the grade change of the actual site. So the ADA seating's on the lower patio.
Okay, all right. And then in the plan, there's a triangular area behind the pentagonal planter along North Palm Canyon that looks like it's a dead zone. what is that? What's happening?
There's 3 gas meters there. If you saw in the aerial photo, it was hatched out, and that's because of the gas meters there.
Okay, all right. And I guess that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant from the committee? Okay, discussion. Well, I can start. I think it's a huge improvement. Chris, I really love putting the epay on the outside of the containers, and that ties so well now into the building of the restaurant. My one question for you is gonna be, what does the inside of the containers look like? But I think that vinyl product wallpaper will be perfect. My only comment is the cactus in the little box seems a little unnecessary. And I like the planters around the edge of the deck, but I think the choice of oleanders in those planters isn't appropriate. Those aren't gonna really give you any sort of screening, and I think if those can become more of a soft, decorative sort of look, maybe some plant material that hangs over the edge of the planters, you'd get a lot more bang for your buck with that.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Committee comments, other comments? Do we have a motion? John
Mr.
McCoy, I
Chairman.
mean, John Wall,
Mr. Chairman, I would move to accept. Were there any conditions from planning?
None to change unless you wanted to address the parking.
We had none others to add.
and the only other thing we were gonna talk about was the signage for the, how to find the parking, but Chris addressed that with the way they approach their diners.
Yeah, that was fine.
So if you're motion to approve as submitted,
It is.
do we have a second? Second by Dan Thompson, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Chris. Great improvements, great project. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
How do I get a reservation? That's all.
It's really hard.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all we got. Thank you.
Were you part of this, the Sanchit group?
I'm the owner.
Okay. Well,
I know
thank
that. Do my best.
Okay.
I'll ask my question again. How do I get a reservation?
Where do I park?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Make a reservation, I'll text you where to park.
Okay, item number 3, new business. Request by Marco Bianchi and Brian Mifsud. Owners represented by Studio AR&D for a major architectural application to construct a 7,292 square foot single family residence on a hillside lot and an administrative minor modification for increase in building height located on lots 90 and 91 at 2549 City View Drive. Could we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is my first time before you, back being live, so.
All nervous.
There we go. As you mentioned, Chair, this is a house in Desert Palisades. There's a double lot, not lot 90 and 91. They're proposing to merge these lots. Just to give you a little showing of the site. So in the red on the left is the 2 lots. The location of these lots is at the perimeter of Desert Palisades, and there's currently a large boulder berm that runs along the edge of the property, and this will back up to that boulder berm. So when you merge 2 lots, as you know, there's a 7.5 foot no build area that is between each lot. When we combine the lots, that moves to the outer lot line that's to the south. So the new no build, double build, no build area will be on this south property line. So we'll see that in just a minute when we move on to the site plan. That is what is in this hatched area here. So that is the double no build lot line, and then the setback is beyond that line. So As we mentioned, it's a large 7,292 square feet foot house. Access will be off City View Drive from the driveway that's through the north side of the lot. There's a series of 2 carports. One is up in the corner here, and then there's another carport that's attached to the guest house that is attached to the main house. The main house is in a huge space. It's 5 bedrooms with a lower garage that sits underneath the main house. And on that lower level, there includes a speakeasy and a wine cellar, also the set of stairs that leads up into the main floor. So it basically is a 1-level house with a subterranean garage and other areas that are for recreation purposes. And looking at this site, you'll see that the pool faces to the looks out onto the valley, so it's looking southeast. Bedrooms are on either side of the pool area. There's a series of at-grade solar panels, and my understanding that is to heat the pool, and I'll have the applicant discuss that. And we move on to the landscape plan. There's a series of different plants that they're proposing, shrubs, agaves, cactus, and there's some live turf that's proposed, and that's sort of this sort of area here. Staff was concerned about the use of turf. It's not used widely in Desert Palisades. And one of the recommendations to discuss that today, if it's something that we would want to, the ARC recommendation to either reduce this turf or maybe artificial turf. The other issue with the landscape plan is the proposing Washington Philippa palm trees. That's these green trees with the sort of stars in the middle. Washington Philippa are not on the Desert Palisades plant list. We've not used them in other locations throughout Desert Palisades, and that is an item that the applicant would like to discuss tonight also. There's a lighting plan showing the types of lighting that they're proposed. In your packet that was given to you, there's examples of what the lights, the types of lights that they're proposing. So they're low lights, they're landscape lights, they're lights that are flush to the ground, all to provide areas. As you can see, there's a lot of pathways and a lot of driveways here, and that's what these lighting fixtures would do. They are proposing for an administrative minor modification to increase building height by 2 feet. There's one portion of the house that is over top of the storage area, and we'll get to that shortly. That is at 20 feet tall, so that would require a 2-foot increase in building height. You'll see that we looked at the pillow, which is the dash line as to what is the maximum height within the Desert Palisades guidelines, and that is what's shown on this slide. We have a better graphic, and I'll come back to the slide and talk about the roof deck in just a second. So we get to some floor plans, a roof plan showing solar panels on the roof, material board, and this is the slide we want to look at. So this is where the roof line goes above the pillow or the maximum height permitted. And this is a storage area here, and you'll see that it's a 2-foot increase in height. There, you'll see that these white areas are the areas that are above the height limit. One thing to note is that there is a proposed elevator shaft, which is here. We consider that mechanical equipment, and it can project taller above the roof limits. So to go back a few slides. Once again, this is the lower level showing the garage, the stairwells upstairs, and the entertainment portion of the lower level, and then the main house itself with the 5 bedrooms around the main pool area. Looking at, let me go back to this one. So this shows the elevator, and it also shows the roof deck, which is right here. When we look at how the roof deck would be, the guardrail around the roof deck, and if it would meet the requirements of height get back to the slide. So this is the bottom slide where the cursor is. This is the railing of the roof deck, and it is below the pillow. So it does not go above the maximum height. Moving on to the material board, the applicant has provided samples over here on the table if the ARC members wanted to go over and look at the material board. I know in this day and age, when it's on its flat screen, it's hard. We used to get actual boards. Maybe we'll get back to that now that we're in person, but for years, we never had to look at them this way. Not very interactive, but now we have the materials here. So they have provided a series of types of 3D rendering showing what the building would look like. It's a very modern design, cubist with a lot of horizontal and vertical elements to it. This shows the types of extra carports with the garage tucked underneath the house itself. And then the pavers that we use for the driveway. Off to the left is the guest area, the guest wing of the house that's detached. And the pool area showing as it faces southeast. And then as you move around the house, other types of images of what the property will look like and the types of material that will be used. A lot of wood, a lot of glass, metal framing, and the types of plants that they're proposing, use of boulders and boulder berm that are currently existing in the house. So, Chair, when we do recommend that the project be approved, I do have several recommendations for conditions if possible. We do recommend that the AMN be approved for a 2-foot additional increase in building height. That the Washington proliferate be removed from the landscape plan, and the applicant wants to discuss that with you. Explore reducing the turf area, and then a parcel merger would be needed, and that is one of the conditions of approval from our engineering department. So that would happen at a later date when this should things the ARC approve the project today. That concludes my report, and as I mentioned, the applicant is here and would like to come up and speak.
Thank you, Glenn. Does anybody in the committee have questions for staff? Dan?
Is grass allowed in Desert Palisade?
The grasses are permitted in Desert Palisade. It is used at other locations, but this is extensive use of it.
Okay, thank you. Oh, one other question. How tall is the roof railing? I can't see it on the plan.
Right. You can't really see it in the plan. I do have the large drawings. I'll have to go up there. We would have to meet the standards of what code would require.
Okay. And that wouldn't put it above the roof line or the threshold.
The maximum height it would not.
Okay.
Chair Jakeway?
Robert?
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. A question for you regarding the solar array on the ground. Are there any requirements that be screened?
It's against the boulder berm, so it would not be visible from as you go up tramway. Solar panels that are at grade need to not be any taller than 6 feet. So it will be low, it will not be any taller than where the wall would be. And we could talk about adding some skirting or something around the bottom of it to screen the racking system. I'm not sure how tall this may be, and we applicant would address that.
So, but just beyond the no build zone, isn't there another property, another potential single family residence there?
Yes, there is a lot. It's to the lower level, to the south.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, the applicant has 10 minutes to make a presentation of the project. Please give us your name.
Hi. Walking. Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah.
So, hello, everybody. Thank you, and
just want to give you a little bit of background on the project and design and the owner. By the way, the owners are here with us tonight. It's Marco and Brian. As we know them, and they're available for the comment if there's time for that. A bit of background on the project that might help shed a little light on some of the design evolution for the project. They're a younger couple who intends to make this their kind of forever home, and so they've got plans to begin a family here, including some children or in the future and pets. They've got somewhat of a large extended family that they intend to entertain and keep here on many holidays. It's part of their ritual now. That they enjoy entertaining on many holidays and weekends and things like that. Some for short periods and extended periods of stay. And so it became a big part of the design of maybe a larger home, but also an estate. So that was one of the driving factors of the design of this property and also. I think that's kind of important to know when you're thinking about some of the design decisions that we made throughout this process. As some of these items come up like turf and some of the outdoor areas. They also have some other interests, including hobbies and goals. And one of them, exercise, is a big thing for Marco. Swimming is a big part of his life, and so that's a daily ritual for him, lap swimming. So there's a 75-foot pool, and that's something that occurs every day. Heating the pool year round is a big thing, and so solar heating became something that was critical to help offset some of the heating costs of the pool, which is why we have the solar heating array, which we think we did an excellent job of screening from everywhere, including the only neighbor, which is to the east. And screening that, we laid that out in such a way on our grading plan, site plan, and landscape, and screening that from the neighbors and terrace that in a way where the only potential would be the east neighbor, but the way we've terraced that on the grading plans and landscape, we think that's about impossible to see from that east neighbor. And of course, you can't see it from the street, you can't see it from the hiking path to the north, and then there's only the mountains to the south and the west. So we think we've done a pretty good job there. The design really started with this house being thought of as kind of a lookout and an area. That was a design directive that the owners only discussed very early on. That was really a driver for some of the decisions around the architectural style of the house. So it really drove some of the early decisions about how this house would connect to the earth and the site and sit on the land and the landscape. And you'll see that that kind of drove some of the materials and the architectural style of the house at the base of the foundation. And if you see, I set up some of the actual materials over there on the table if you guys want to get up and walk around to get a better look at some of those materials. We think we connected very well to the landscape in those materials and how the house really grows and connects to the site and the local materials. And then out of that, it grows, and it does have some mass and some sex appeal to it, like it grows and cantilevers off of the site. There is some of that cantilevering off of the site and cantilevering off of the architecture itself. You see the office kind of cantilevers off of the main entry and kind of shrouds and covers the main pedestrian entry. As you come up the motor court, there's a sort of a drop off for guests. And that kind of covers the main entry and the main entry door. As the guests enter, they come in and are greeted by this very large sculptural wooden staircase. It's very earthy and tone. And also earthy and tone is the sort of concrete rounded looking wall, very connected to the earth and nature and its striation and color and appearance and texture. Then they ascend these wooden staircase up to the second floor, which is really the main floor connected to the earth, and the main floor that's connected to the landscape above. You'll see on that guest wing where Glenn is pointing out, there's a height violation sort of at the southeast corner of that gas line there. That's actually not really Stewart, but it's the outdoor terrace of one of the guest bedrooms at the far east end of that wing there. Mhm. So I think just want to comment on a couple of things that might be about it for the presentation. I think we'll get into a couple of some issues that came up during our review with the planning department, and I know some concerns that are coming up with the that you guys might have discussed during the sort of the pre-game report that you may have had with the planning director here. The roof deck, it's about 180 square feet total, just for your information. The parapet height is 3'6" tall. None of that roof deck is covered. Just so you know, the turf area is about 2,100 square feet in total. It is natural turf, it's not synthetic turf. We'd like to keep that way. I know when that came up with Brian and the planner here throughout the process, one solution that we thought of in our office that took a lot of kind of back and forth between ourselves and the client. There was a fair amount of passion surrounding that conversation and some tweaking of the area that we had delineated for that turf area. In other words, it was a lot of conversation back and forth about how much or how little, picking up a little bit of extra square footage. There was talk about what kind of sports would be played and measuring the distances around that. And so a lot of thought is going to how much turf and the lineal footage that was calculated for that. I'd like to keep that. That was pretty well thought out and thought about what activities would be played there with family and friends and that sort of thing. What I'd like to do is put that through to the irrigation consultant and see how that helps out on our irrigation drawings and calculations, and then see if that required any reduction in that square footage. I think it's kind of a general statement to say that it's excessive. It's about 3.71% of the total area of the site. The palm trees, I think, are a little bit of a tricky issue. And as we kicked that around in my own office, the way I looked at that situation, there was a little bit of dichotomy around that. And the way I handled that was I said, you know, if I was on that ARC board and anybody else presented that in Desert Palisades on the other lot, like an infill lot on Desert Palisades, and I'd say, no way. You're not putting palm trees up there on any other lot east of this property because it's going to block people's views. It shouldn't be allowed. The reason we proposed it here was it was pushed all the way out against the western mountains. And I thought that it creates a little microclimate and a lush landscape for this particular area of the site and the development that was not offensive, it didn't block anyone's views. And the reason it becomes a sticky situation, which I'll admit I'm slightly worried about, is does it set a precedent for other projects in the site? Say, well, if these guys did it, why can't I do it? Even though I'm in the middle of an area. So I'm worried about that. It is, these trees do exist over at the DWA. They exist up in Way. So when I look up there, it's not completely foreign object. So for that reason, I think, well, it doesn't stand out with the complete sort of. I'm sure it's maybe not native to the Coachella Valley, but they do exist and it's what the sort of. I like what it does for this particular area. I like that it's up against the mountain, not blocking it view. we thought of some alternate potentials like a brassica that might be kept short and could potentially not grow, or would certainly potentially not grow as tall. And create sort of a similar microclimate. Yeah. So I'll admit I'm a bit torn about it. I do very much support client desire to create sort of a microclimate, a sort of oasis out there in the desert. And particularly up on that side of yeah, I think that may have been the last one to make there. Presentation.
Okay, thank you. Public comments. Do we have any comments from the public regarding this particular project?
If you'd like to come on up there.
Hi.
Please give us your name.
I'm Brian Nessa. Thank you. It's on camera. Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Sure. I'm Brian Nessa. My husband Marco. Hi, Mark will be on camera. Been together 20 years this September. This whole thing is fascinating, by the way. We're very passionate about this and very excited. We've lived all over the world together, and we moved here pre-pandemic and fell in love with Palm Springs. We used to visit here with our friends a lot. We'd rent houses and we're like, okay, this is what we gotta live here one day. And with our friends, once we just had some fun and looked at some houses for sale, and we just jumped at it. And so like being here is so important to us, and it's part of our future for sure. I'm from Canada, he's from El Salvador, so our families are in different countries. So families are important. So right now, like my parents are actually here. They're spending a full month with us right now at the house. His parents come over the holidays a lot, and they're planning to eventually move down this way. So making the house very accessible for everyone is also really important for us. So I'm pushing for them to make sure, like, the hallways are wheelchair accessible for one day, and that's why like having an elevator is really important for them as well. And tell me if I'm going off. But we've talked about having kids too, and I've been a camp counselor for a camp for kids with trouble breathing and tracheostomies and in wheelchairs, and so I thought maybe one day that would be a child that we might look to adopt. And so having an easy accessible place would be perfect for children as well. So we're looking at tons of different things, because like I said, this is our forever home, and we want to make sure that it's done right the first time. And Marco, everyone, I just want to add, we're incredibly grateful to be here at this stage and passionate about the project. The amount of thought that has gone into it is incredible. And we think that some of these, finessing items, particularly around landscaping, and some of the areas that we discussed around height, have to do with just a really holistic approach to make this a really special project. I think it is a place that stands out in Desert Palisades, particularly because it is at the very edge of it. So we've looked a lot at, kind of what surrounds it and what the ridge that lies behind, and then the water facility with the palm trees. But I think in our brief, it was certainly, highlight this area, respect the land, yet create something that's incredibly unique. And I think it has to do with the fact that we are fortunate enough that we've got it's really nice footprint, and that creates opportunities to tuck some things away. Talk about the Washingtonia, et cetera, without disrupting the look and feel of the neighborhood, which is also really important to us.
Well, I think you used a good word, finesse, because you have a great architect. And so it's the details, just looking at a few things and fussing with a few things, but I will get it spectacular.
Thank you. Like I said, do it right the first time. So go to this guy.
Well, architects use an electric eraser or their computer delete button. Out on the site, it's a lot more difficult, so. Okay, is there anybody else from the public who would like to make comments? Okay, thank you. Questions from the committee for the applicant, for Sean? Couple of comments and some questions. I think the Palm Grove concept is spectacular against the berm. I don't quite see the palms in the courtyard and would maybe think to consider some smaller palms in the courtyard, but I would put more palms against the berm. Really create like, there's these little pockets up on the hillside where there's a wild palm group. To really get that sort of feel, I think could be kind of special. On a technical side, as I looked at the elevations, well, first of all, I'll just go through sheet by sheet. On the basement, the speakeasy. I had an issue like this where they made me provide a second exit for fire. That might be something you need to consider or talk with people. And then the questions on the elevations, unfortunately, a lot of the call outs got confused. So say on page 11, it shows on the guest house, which looks like a flagstone or a flat stone, but that's never labeled anywhere.
Sorry, so one more time.
On page 11,
Yeah.
on the guest house, there's a stone material shown that looks like a flagstone,
Mhm.
but it's never called out, and it's only shown on a couple walls of the guest house.
Okay.
And the same kind of paperwork issue happened on the projecting office. There's an element that's called out material number 19, which is never called out on any of the material legends. It's shown in a photo on the material list, but it doesn't tell us if it's wood or metal or what it is. It's kind of a lattice work with the lattice going vertical. So that, and then it appears to me the rest of that office is the fiber panels.
This
Are those
portion-
used anywhere else on the project or just there?
I believe just there. So quite a bit of that office is the bronze aluminum panel. And so there's a combination of flat panel and then they extrude aluminum in like a tight V groove. Well, similar to the Gucci building down on El Paseo has that bronze aluminum and that tight break V groove.
And then on the elevations on page 13 of the carport up by the main house, the elevation appears to be CMU, but the call out is stucco. So not sure exactly what that is. Would prefer definitely stucco because I don't see this house
Sorry, what, sorry.
on page 13, the freestanding carport by the main house. The depiction on the drawing looks like CMU, but the call out is
We
stucco.
don't have CMU there.
Okay, so that graphically is just incorrect. And one of the big ones is, can you look at page 16?
Yeah.
To the right of the entry door,
Which one, which drawing?
the north elevation,
Yeah.
number 2,
Mhm.
to the right of the main front door,
Yes,
there's a huge glass wall that's in that stairwell.
yeah,
But I would think there's a horizontal band through the middle of that glass where floor number 1 over floor number 2 would be. And I would think at the top of the glass, there would be a horizontal band, unless this is like a,
we want the glass to be proud of that band.
okay,
Mhm. Where that structure is behind that. the glass house is
and that
over.
happens in a couple of different
Yeah.
spots in the house. And then my only other comment is the elevator.
Yeah,
I think it looks really out of place. I've lived in houses with roof decks. You go up there twice in your life and then you say, I don't want to deal with those damn stairs, because you've got such a beautiful view lot anywhere. Now I can see, I don't have, in fact, I like the view deck for what it does to the roof, that it adds that extra layer with a 3.5 foot high wall. It's that elevator shaft that's so thin that bothers me. As a comment,
Mhm.
other committee members.
Yeah.
John Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just kind of some quick Q&A here. And I will launch off of Tom's comment in terms of the elevator tower. How much above the height limit does that rise?
6 feet.
Okay, and I realize that it is a moot point with respect to the zoning ordinance,
Right,
correct?
it's mechanical equipment.
Right, does it come up to that height because it's delivering passengers to the roof deck, or is that mechanical?
Technically, yes.
Technically,
Well,
yes.
Yes, it does. It comes up that high. Because it's delivering people to that roof deck.
Okay, all right. It is a visual element in the elevation composition that we see. Another question is in terms of the turf, the 2,100 feet of turf, does it have purpose or is it just lawn enjoyment?
It has. Purpose. Provided.
Just-
lawn
just
enjoyment.
That, right,
Yeah.
okay, got it. Glenn, on that, I need clarification on that no build zone when you merge lots. That does not benefit the mathematics, does it? You have to, you don't end up collapsing down some of the square footage for a no build zone when you do a lot merger, right?
I'm not following, you mean collapsing down like the overall percentage of building area?
Correct, yes,
No, that's included in there, but you don't collapse it, no.
right. Okay,
Can I elaborate on that?
yes, please, because it is a confusing rule.
Yeah, so just to give you a quick explanation on that. So.
Sean, can you take one of these up?
Of course. Thank you. So if you can just imagine for a minute that there was a lot line right through here.
Right,
And there was, these ones right there, one on each side. When you make that lot line disappear, and though you have those two buildings and to relocate. You do have the option to put one over here and one over here, or two over here, or two over here.
right.
And so we have the option.
It doesn't go away as a requirement.
No, it's actually
That
required
was-
to put them both back and redistribute them as you please.
Okay.
We opted, it was beneficial
Mhm.
for us, not area, relocate the both over here, and
Okay.
which is when we come that way. Just that way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
A question on P10. There is a raised roof portion. I'm just not, I think it is. It's indicated in the center of the two wings. What is that?
Sorry. What sheet?
On PL10? It's your roof plan. Down the ridge center spine of the two wings.
Yeah.
Is that raised? What is that?
So that is a doghouse for giving HVAC ducting
Right,
from probably an FAU closet within the house and getting ducts down the central core
right.
above that thin roof line.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Probably 18 inches high above the roof line or us.
Other questions from the committee?
Yeah, I had a couple. I'm
Steve.
looking at several of the renders. PL24, for instance, I think there's a couple others. I can see the solar panels clearly. Isn't there a screening requirement for those?
What I might comment on that is. You can see them in these renders. But if you would. We had this discussion in our office quite a bit. I might ask for a little leniency on this project with screening of solar. First, I might ask to study the grading. Mainly because if you look at City View Drive, if you guys can go to the grading plan, if you have a copy of that, and if we just go through some data here quickly. For instance, City View Drive. I think I'm at 995. Yes. Yeah. Have a concrete outside the east side of the patio where there was a height violation is at 1016. When 995 1016 is 20 feet higher just to the concrete and leaving the roof yet. I'm just down the concrete. So it's down the concrete and I got another 10 feet to go before I even get to the top of the roof. It's 30 feet. And before I even get to the roof. And then if I go to the roof and look at where the solar panels are. Down to the roof phone. Or page 10. Thank you. There are no roof panels on that wing. And there are no roof panels on the master bedroom. Sorry, there are, but then they're limited to the south side of that doghouse, so they are state. So they're limited to the main wing, which is another few feet higher than the other. They're projecting another 80 or 90 feet further away from the street. So it's highly unlikely. I don't think, I think it's gonna be pretty impossible that they'll be seen from the street. And that's why I say, like, we've talked about this from the office quite a bit, and I said, well, I'll tell you what. If we do a project right across the street from us, I'm gonna be really careful that we screen from these guys. And that we screen, we keep it with solar panels across the street from these two down from here. But it's not like these guys, I think it's the sheep that are going to be looking down at the solar panels in this particular. Yeah. And
It's the same issue of precedent.
right,
Has the HOA reviewed this,
they have, yeah, and they've approved it.
both the palm trees and the panels?
Yes, I verified that again today with Nick, that they have approved it and which landscape plans they've approved. Did they have the latest ones with the palm trees on it? And the answer was affirmative.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the reason you don't want to screen?
Were you,
solar?
sorry, Steve, wait, had you wrapped up the episode?
Yeah. What's the reason not?
Dan, put
wanting-
your microphone on, please.
What's the reason not wanting to screen the solar? Because it does create a much cleaner look on the roof when they're screened. Rather than seeing the posts and stuff, it just has a much better aesthetic to it.
Mhm. Oh, I don't think you'll, just didn't think you'd need to, I don't think you'd see from anywhere, I think anybody would see. Yeah. Not opposed to it, Dan.
No.
Mhm.
I think it's the same issue that you're not showing the dog houses on the elevations and they stand up at least as high as the solar panels. It's an angle of vision issue. They're kind of invisible.
Mhm.
How tall are the solar panels that are on the ground?
We have a detail for that, and I thought it was in the, was coming through fever play when that first came up. I'm gonna say that they're about 5 or 6 feet tall. Because we had presented the same detail for lot 10. In the same neighborhood, and they sit on steel rails. I'll err on the side of being conservative and say they're 6 feet tall at the high end.
And
They're about 10 feet long. You know, in actual length, and about 4 feet wide, so about a 4 foot by 10 foot panel.
and they're mostly surrounded by boulders, so you see mostly just the tops of them.
Yes. Boulders and some brittle bush and grading berms.
The structure on the next one that has the pool equipment, is that above grade or is the top of that structure down at grade? Is it like a subterranean equipment?
Sort of half and half. Part of the walls retaining. And you see some stairs that kind of come up into the east there, into that full equipment area.
Other questions of the applicant?
Is that the panels you were talking about, screening, or were you talking about the roof panel?
Well, I'm just kind of curious about both.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, we'll discuss it. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Marco.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Yep.
Appreciate your addition to our community.
Thank you.
Any discussion?
I'll look at you anymore. Overall, I think it's a really nice looking house, a nice looking project. I do have concerns about the elevator shaft kind of sticking up. I don't know how it would get addressed if it maybe was larger and longer so that it didn't look so like there's a box on top maybe. I do think that the solar panels, even though you can't see them, should be screened, but I'm a big proponent of having those types of things screened.
Thank you, Dan. John McCoy.
I think it's a great project. I concur with your comments, Chair Jakeway, regarding the palm trees. There are many spots within the hills where there are clusters of native palms. And I think being on the boundary of this project, I think it works in that type of location. I will say, I believe you have been near the spa also, maintenance. In terms of seeds and dropping, you'll have some things to up on that. The turf area, if your water calculations, if you do that and you decide to move forward, I would say put some effort into soil prep. Get the soil base in so you can get the roots, which will help you with the water conservation in the long run over the years. The rest of it, I think it looks very nice. Thanks.
John, anything else?
It is an ambitious plan. In spite of the fact that it is a large piece of land, there is a lot going on and requiring a lot of coordination. Just in terms of building parts, components, range of views to the site. And the only thing that to me is a bit of a red flag that is problematic is the elevator tower. And the rest, it's, these are characteristics that contribute to the overall design.
Thank you. Steve, anything else?
Nothing really to add. I mean, I think I agree with the elevator tower feeling a little bit of it almost looks like a chimney in a way. So I'm wondering if there's a way to expand it and maybe incorporate some mechanical equipment there or something so that we can get a little bit more volume. So it would feel more in scale with the rest of the building. And then I still feel pretty strongly about making sure that the solar panels are screened properly.
I agree with the comments about the elevator tower. I certainly can understand an elevator going from the lower floor to the main floor. I think to get from one sun deck to another sun deck, needing to have a elevator, I think is a bit overkill. And so I don't see the real need for it. And as I play that against what it causes aesthetically, which isn't very pleasing, I would hope that the elevator can terminate at the second floor so it doesn't project up through the roof. But everything else on this project, I think, is really nice. Do we have a motion? I'm not gonna hear. I'm looking this way. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve as presented with the only condition being elimination of the elevator tower as a projection and screening of the solar collectors.
The rooftop solar collectors.
The rooftop solar collectors, not the ones on grade.
Do we have a second to that? Dan Thompson, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Sure, I think the applicant would like to take another look at the elevator.
They can always come back to us if they have some other thoughts. Sure, we're open to that.
They would have to appeal your decision.
Can't they come as an amended? We've decided to change something during construction and we want to get your review of it. I mean, that happens all the time on custom homes.
Yeah, I
And
suppose
there-
that would be one way, you know. if-
They're especially nice if they ask permission, because most people make the change and don't ask.
Yeah.
If the committee prefers, then we could look at how we could modify the plans either administratively or by coming back to the commission. It would probably be cleaner to continue the item if that's the request of the applicant, but it would require a motion to reconsider and then a motion to continue. So-
Well, I would say this, we know that the house as it sits is approved. So if we don't approve it now, if we continue it, they can continue to move ahead with their drawings and other design work, knowing that we're just gonna look at the refinements to the elevator tower. So is that a condition that the team is willing to work with?
Yeah.
So if I might, then I think, and if the committee is willing to do this, perhaps in reconsidering your motion, add a condition that allows them to work administratively with staff on the elevator projection to arrive at something that meets the comments that were made here tonight. Is that acceptable? That would-
That's certainly acceptable to me, and I would work off that, what Steve said about, can we make the scale of that more than just looking like a tower in Siena and make it look, like it's something that's a piece of the building.
Okay.
And that's gonna be a bit of a code issue because we can't put usable space up there. It has to be mechanical space.
Right.
But I guess it could be a big room that you just call mechanical room.
So if that's, I think that's probably the best way to do it is to reconsider the vote, amend the condition, the motion to add a condition directing them to work with staff on resolving the elevator.
So tell me if I'm doing this right. I'd like to make a motion to the committee to reconsider the previous approval.
Yes.
All in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And then I'd like to ask John McCoy to revise his
John Walsh.
motion.
John Wall.
I'm sorry, John Walsh.
Okay.
At least I got you separated.
You could call me today, it's fine. Mr. Chairman, I wish to amend my motion to require staff to work with the applicant on mitigating the size and the appearance of the elevator mechanical tower.
And who's second? Do you approve of that
Yes.
revision? Okay, all in favor of the amended motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. John, good to see you. Now, we're in the portion of the meeting for committee member comments. Does anybody on the committee have comments on any subject or questions or concerns? Then we're gonna let Chris give us some staff comments.
Thanks. So first of all, Ken Lyons, who I think you all know, is here tonight as part of the recall when we went through the process of restructuring the review committee. And sort of the separation of the powers of the planning commission and sort of how we went through that process. As part of that, Ken was promoted to the role of principal planner and urban designer for the department. And it was the intention that he would take on additional responsibilities with the architectural review committee in both advising you all and helping to run these meetings, as well as working with the other staff in the department at the early sort of, beginning stages of projects to advise them on urban design and architectural items. So that we can start to flesh some of those things out at the beginning of a process, rather than, here when we're with you all in this room. So he's here tonight because we're going to be sharing the responsibilities for the next couple of meetings, so he'll start to take over some of the reins. I will always be here, but the idea is he'll sort of be the principal staff liaison for the architectural review committee in that new role. So that's the first update from us. That's why Ken is here.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yes.
I think one of the reasons I was really hoping that this sort of position would be created is the applicants have been getting advice as far as design, but I think they also need advice as to the completeness of the submittal. So that they don't bring us things that don't show roof screening, that don't show mechanical equipment, so that we don't have to kind of question something that we don't have any evidence about. So hopefully that can be something that you're gonna become adept at. Thank you.
So with that, one update on an item that was before you all a couple of weeks ago, which was lot 1, 1711 Pinnacle Point. And you recall the committee turned down that application by Brian Foster. They were at the time seeking, in addition to major architectural review, administrative minor modifications related to front and rear yard setbacks. And there was a discussion about what was necessitating the rear yard setback. And I think that was a large reason for the committee making a determination to deny that project. They did file an appeal. The appeal went before the planning commission and was heard at their last meeting 2 weeks ago now. In the process of filing that appeal, they did make revisions to the plans to eliminate that rear yard minor modification they had been seeking. So they took the advice that you all gave them at that meeting, made revisions to the plan. And so it was a little odd administratively in that they had to advance to the planning commission for the appeal, although they made changes to the plans to address your feedback. And so on that basis, the planning commission did grant their appeal, finding that they had made revisions to the plan to address the concerns of the ARC had made. I wanted to update you all on that. And if there's no questions on that. The only other update that I have is on our remote meetings and remote participation. And so just kind of the evolution and thinking around that. So the city council did at their meeting at the end of February opt to rescind the local emergency order that had been in place since the beginning of the pandemic, in coordination with the state lifting the state's emergency order on February 28th. So there's now no state of emergency either at the state or local level. And our thinking, and I think the last time we spoke about remote meetings, our thinking was that with those emergency orders no longer in place, we would no longer under the Brown Act and under other state law be able to hold meetings remotely, and that we would need you all here in person. That thinking is shifting a little bit. There is a state law on the books through the rest of this year that does allow local bodies to make a determination that it is still in the public interest or for a public health reason to allow remote participation, should the local council make that determination that that's important. So they have to re-up those findings every 30 days. The city council did make those findings at the end of February. They are encouraging us to engage in our meetings in person, and we are. So this is more for informational purposes, but they are letting individual boards and commissions kind of determine how best to conduct their business going forward. So I say this because it does allow us a little more flexibility for the rest of the year for individual members to participate remotely, should they need to. For personal reasons, we do still need a quorum of committee members present here in the room if we are holding in-person meetings. So we will always need 4 of you here. So it will require a little coordination should we get too many people that need to be remote for any particular reason.
So we cannot have a quorum if we aren't physically in this room.
Correct, in the advertised location.
Because I would think when you make comments to council, the fact that just like today, that Robert, who wasn't feeling well, could join us anyway.
Yeah.
Or when Sean used to be traveling, could join us anyway. That was a real advantage of the Zoom.
It is an advantage, and I'm glad that we will have that flexibility for the rest of the year. Unfortunately, the law automatically sunsets in January of 2024, and at that point we revert to regular Brown Act rules. And there were some changes to state law that took effect at the beginning of the year that really didn't provide any more flexibility than already existed under the Brown Act. So it allows, I think, up to twice a year that a member can participate remotely for a very limited set of extenuating circumstances. So it really needs to be a personal or family illness or some other reason. And it's very limited. The alternate is that if you need to participate remotely, we need to advertise that you are participating remotely in an advertised location. You need to post the agenda on your door where you are. And members of the public are technically allowed to participate with you from your home. So I suspect none of you will want to take that up next year.
We're all coming over, Robert. Way.
With a 10-penny nail.
To your point, Gateway, it is unfortunate. It would require the state to allow us that flexibility after this year. So that's where we are right now. Those are the only updates that I have.
That's
Okay.
a lot.
Stop talking.
Christopher, there's one more though, about the plans.
Yes, yeah, so we're kind of, I think this may require a little bit of thinking behind the scenes, so we are kind of in this position where I think a number of you were getting your plans digitally. We are still printing plans for some members. I think given that we are back in person, we are just going to go ahead and print packages for all of you, unless anyone has a strong preference that they want to bring in their own laptop. And do it that way, we would certainly welcome that. But for the time being, I think we'll go ahead and print everyone plans. They'll be here available for pickup on Thursday before our meetings, or certainly here on the day of the meetings, if you don't get to them before that. More long-term, we are moving, as you know, to our digital application system, which is going live at the end of May. That's going to eliminate the requirement for applicants to submit paper copies of their plans. We have instructions sort of administratively, from the city manager's office, from the sustainability committee, and from the clerk's office, that we need to undertake paper reduction and printing packages going forward. So one of the things that we are working on through the annual budget process is an attempt to get you all technology that will allow you, in this room to have laptops or iPads or some kind of technology with the plans on them for your review and for these meetings. That has to go through the budget process, and we'll see where that goes. So we will have a gap between sort of when we go live with the new application system in May and the approval of the 2024 fiscal budget, and the purchasing of, if we get approved, that technology, that we need to strategize a little bit on what that solution is for that gap time. So I can return at the next meeting with an answer to that question. And in the meantime, we'll just print you all packages.
And as you're brainstorming with these people, I know that John and I have talked about being able to sit at home and go over the plans over the weekend is so important. And so if there is technology that we're only going to get it on screens here, can we get it on screens at home?
Right, and that's something that we're working on. So we'll also be looking at a software that would go along. Let's say we can get you all iPads or some other kind of tablet. We would look to get you Bluebeam software so that you can manipulate and mark up and do your normal review digitally on those screens. I understand it's not as a deal, but we would make sure that we're hoping to give you the tools so that you can do that at home beforehand, and then bring that same technology in here and have it in front of you here without paper.
I would ditto what Tom is saying, and I don't know, I would look upon perhaps the decision from the sustainability committee. They need to survey us and to see how it really happens, because yes, this is a very tactile process. It's very difficult. You miss things on a screen, you just do. And at the risk of sounding like a dinosaur, I mean, there's an appropriate place for the technology, but honestly, it's just print the packs and we all will arrive with our homework done and markups, and it just seems.
Yeah.
Even if there's some kind of middle ground of these sheets, come to us electronically, but having
Yes.
plans that you can read.
I think it's also sort of a financial issue, in that without the submissions coming from our applicants, the increased cost of us printing all of those materials and the staff time is just not something that we can accommodate.
But I think John just made a great comment. All of this 8.5 by 11 stuff,
Oh,
that certainly could come
Yeah,
digitally. It's the
absolutely.
actual
It's the
drawing.
plan.
So my point is, since those are getting submitted to us now digitally, we are not being provided the copies by the applicants, and that was a decision that was made, I guess, a year or two ago when we embarked on the process to move to online
And
application.
the other thing, if this can be part of the discussion, when city council asked the chairman of each of the different city committees to give a little presentation, the one thing that I told them is that our committee is the only one in this entire city that I know of where every committee member is a professional. And we're here because of that professional expertise. And part of being able to use that expertise is to be able to read the drawings appropriately. Where I know a lot of the other committees, certainly they want to see things, but they don't necessarily, it's not as critical for them to be able to really review them.
And may I add, it's far more text oriented and word oriented. We've got graphic issues that you just really have to kind of grind through and read them carefully. And we do our homework and make sure that everything.
And I think, again, it's not going to be as ideal as paper, but I think the conversation around technology is limited to planning commission, architectural review committee, sort of the committees that are undertaking the work you're referring to. Not every board and commission will be sort of given that. So I understand it's a challenging discussion to have, but, we're gonna have to figure this out together and come up with some solutions.
Just to add to that, I've been getting the plans digitally, but as an example with the Desert Palisade project, I was able to blow it up to 500%, and then it's so pixelated, I can't read anything. So I had a great deal of difficulty because that was a very complex project to really understand and what was being presented. And so even blowing it up 250%, it was still very difficult to understand what was going on.
Okay, that's good feedback. So we can think on that a little bit more, but I will say the direction is that we are eliminating paper, so we'll need to figure strategize on and troubleshoot on those issues.
Okay. Are we meeting in 2 weeks from today?
Meeting in today
And here in the conference room?
March. Here in the conference room. March 20th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.